What's up, guys? Iceman here. So this story is about a very unfortunate attack that occurred in Banff. But before I get into it, I'd like to thank you all for your support on this channel. And if you will, like this video, subscribe to the page, and paw that bell so you're notified next time I post a video. And if you want to support me further, you can become a channel member or a patron. Links in the description below. So let's get into this chilling tale. It was a cold, wet September night. Katrina and Josie were cuddled up in their tent, and Easton was under the blanket with the glowing screen of his Game Boy peering through. There was a light rain and storm, the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance, but something unsettling seemed to be lurking around the campsite. The occasional huff or grunt, and the sound of rocks clinging together around the campfire. "What is it?" Katrina whispered. "Maybe a moose?" She slowly unzipped the tent and peered into the darkness, looking toward the fire pit. She saw nothing but the outline of trees and a hazy, dark sky. Lightning flashed, and she noticed something large standing near the fire pit, facing toward her, but couldn't quite make out what it was. Her eyes were tired and out of focus, but then lightning flashed again, and she saw it. This time, it was much closer, approaching them, hesitantly, but with intent. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I think it's a bear," as she nervously zipped back up the tent. She pulled the blanket off of Easton and turned off his Game Boy, while covering his mouth. Josie scrambled to pick up the granola bar wrappers and finished sealing them in a Ziploc bag, but it was seemingly too late. Lightning struck again, and the shadow of the creature could be seen cast over the tent. But then, silence and darkness, and only the sound of faint rain spattering on the tent walls. Suddenly, the outline of the creature could be seen through the tent wall as it began digging under the tent. An eerie sense of fear filled the onlookers as the bear ceaselessly dug into the ground, pushing in the tent wall. It realized it couldn't get under the tent and stopped digging for about a moment. And then, like a curious cat, it began pulling at the sidewall of the tent. Its sharp black claws sliced into the thin nylon, causing several gashes, releasing the cold wind into the tent. The sound outside grew louder and more prominent. The bear could be heard grunting as it curiously pawed at the flimsy enclosure. The women and child tucked under their sleeping bags, but the bear grew nearer, getting more brazen by the moment. Katrina and Josie were from British Columbia, Canada, and always wanted to visit Banff National Park in Alberta. The women were in their early 20s and mid-30s, and Easton was Josie's nephew, whom she would watch on occasion and give his single mom space and time. It was late October of 2016 when the trio set off on their 650-mile adventure. Their campsite in Banff was beautiful, surrounded by thick spruce trees, the beautiful sounds of birds, and a river flowing in the distance, along with chipmunks and squirrels collecting acorns and nuts in preparation for the coming winter. Something hideous happened that night. The bear managed to make its way into the tent, pursuing the vulnerable humans. The three of them laid there as still as possible, holding their breath. But the bear began feeling around the sleeping bags and managed to grab Josie by the shin and dragged her out of the tent. Easton screamed for his aunt, but the bear paid no attention to the young boy's distress. Lightning flashed, and the bear could be seen on top of Josie, attempting to dig into her chest as she protected herself with her forearms. The bear viciously pulled at her, scratching gaping wounds into her arms as she struggled to survive. Katrina couldn't take the sight of the attack, and without any shoes on, ran out of the tent near the fire pit to grab a large stick that was still smoldering at the end of it. She charged the bear, stabbing the stick into its shoulder, and instantly it turned around to attack her. It tackled her to the ground and clenched its jaws around her neck and began digging into her side with its thick, bacteria-ridden claws. Josie heaved over to her side, to witness her friend getting mauled by the bear. She struggled to her feet, and dizzy, she ran back to the tent to grab Easton. The roars and moans could be heard behind her. She led Easton out of the tent and demanded he go get help. The lodge was 3 miles down the trail, and it was dark, but the situation was dire and imminent. Easton hesitated to follow directions as he was witnessing his aunt getting eaten alive by a bear. Josie, pacing back and forth, not knowing what to do, shouting at the bear as it tore into her friend. Josie looked down at her shin, and it looked like a chewed-up chicken wing, with the flesh hanging off of it. She hesitated, not knowing what to do, as her friend was being eaten alive before her. She remembered she had a can of pepper spray in her backpack, which was still in the tent, so she rushed to the tent, dove in, and scrambled to find her backpack, and began digging through it. She struggled to find the small pink canister. She knew every second counted as her friend's screams were growing faint. Suddenly, she heard the scream of a young boy, and she knew it was Easton, expecting to see him being mauled by the bear as well, only to find him charging at the bear with a stick. He beat the bear over the head and face, and then used the stick as a spear and jabbed it into its eye. The stick didn't quite make its way into the socket, but the bear moaned and swatted the stick out of the determined boy's hands. It then stood on its hind legs and walked toward him, and with one massive swipe, knocked him to the ground. The bear then returned to all fours and made its way back to Katrina's corpse, and there it began gnawing at her shoulder. Josie looked down at the backpack and then up again at the grotesque scene right outside the tent. She fumbled around and finally found the can of pepper spray and charged the bear with it, emitting the red spray everywhere. Katrina, who was under the bear, started gagging from the red cloud, and the bear coughed and sneezed as well, but charged through the cloud and attacked Josie again, taking her to the ground. It began clawing into her, gashing her up and down, relentlessly attacking. Katrina lay there, motionless, defenseless, seemingly lifeless. Easton did the only thing he could do. He ran, and he ran like his life depended on it. He made his way back to the lodge, and a search party was sent out that night to find Katrina and Josie. They returned to the scene about 45 minutes later. The bodies were nowhere near the campsite. The bear apparently dragged their corpses into the brush and dug 2 individual pits to cache their bodies away. The creature defecated and urinated all over their corpses, but somehow the women were still alive when this all happened. The search party began digging through the brush, following trails of blood and so forth. The bear was then spotted, towering over one of the women's bodies, its eyes glowing in the night. It charged at the search party, but was quickly shot down and killed. The creature was estimated to be a 10-year-old Bruin, 275 pounds. An air rescue was sent for Katrina and Josie, and the two were taken together to the nearest hospital, suffering devastating wounds, but somehow managed to survive the attack. Easton had a massive claw mark across his chest, but was deemed by the search party and the park rangers as a hero that night. This attack distilled nightmares in the coming years. Nightmares that didn't cease, as if the bear is still lurking in the campground today. Jeez, what do you guys think about that story? I'm going to link it in the description below. It's quite a thing for a young boy like Easton. I think he was like 11 years old or something, how he decided to go back and fight for his aunt. I consider myself at that age, and it just seems like such a feat to accomplish, to actually charge the enemy the way that he did. And the fact that these two women fought for each other is quite astounding. But I'm wondering what you would have done in that situation. If you were Easton, do you think you would have stayed to fight, or would you have just run out to the lodge when you were told and not turned back? It's concerning to me how many people go camping out in bear country unprepared. I remember just the other day I watched the scene scene from that movie Backcountry where the black bear attacked a tent that had a couple in it. And while the bear was trying to make its way into the tent, the guy was wondering where his axe was and then realized that he left it over by the fire pit, while all the while knowing that this bear was following them. I just feel like I would have had that axe on my side at all times, no matter what, if I saw a bear or if I knew I was in bear country for that matter. But it just seems like a lot of people go out there unprepared. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on these matters in the comments below. And if you will, like this video, and I will see you all soon with more chilling tales from the Iceman.